Obviously, we're all concerned about what's happening in Egypt, and we've been monitoring it very closely. Our commitment to Egypt has never been around any particular individual or party. Our commitment has been to a process. Our position's always been, it's not our job to choose who Egypt's leaders are. We do want to make sure that all the voices are heard, and it's done in a peaceful way. Over the last few days, the passion and the dignity that has been demonstrated by the people of Egypt has been an inspiration to people around the world, including here in the United States, and to all those who believe in the inevitability of human freedom. To the people of Egypt, particularly the young people of Egypt, I want to be clear. We hear your voices.
Obama, the bystander again. Here are the Egyptians in the millions out on the street trying to bring down an Islamist government, increasingly dictatorial, increasingly intolerant, arresting journalists and judges, trying to Islamicize the military, and the people are saying no. And what does the President of the United States do? He takes a position of studied neutrality. He says he's not supporting either side. And yet, as you pointed out in the Mubarak revolution, he obviously he took the side of the people. He demanded that Mubarak had to go. He was not neutral. This reminds me of the Green Revolution in Iran in 2009, where the same thing happened. Islamist, dictatorial government, the people out in the street, and they were shouting, Obama, Obama, are you with us or against us? And he took a position that was essentially support of the regime. And the reason was he wanted to negotiate a nuclear deal, which he thought he could do, and he didn't want instability. That was a shameful episode. But there's also the idea of the national interest. Mubarak was pro-American. He was an ally of ours. He helped us in all kinds of ways, and Obama worked against him. Morsi represents a movement which is essentially and at heart deeply anti-American and deeply anti-democratic, and yet he's neutral on this. This is a shocking position for a president to take.
Well, let me play devil's advocate. Morsi was duly elected by that country. He was not a dictator. He may be turning into one, but he was not one, as they elected him 1 year ago this past weekend.
We have a long history of dictatorial parties that get elected and then end elections. You had Putin in Russia. Hitler is the greatest example, of course. Chavez, the Sandinistas, the list of these is long. The Brotherhood is not a democratic party. It's not the British Labour, it's not the Democratic Party of America. It's a movement that has an ideology, its allegiance is Islam, and it was, in the short year it was in office, it rammed through a very Islamist extreme constitution with no compromise with anybody and was ruling dictatorially. I think for a president to pretend if you're elected once, you've got the protection and support of the United States is a complete misunderstanding of what legitimacy is.
Does Morsi survive this? What happens in Egypt?
I think the military will take over, but it'll appoint a government of experts, interim, and it will not rule directly. It's a classic example of a compassion, the unintended consequences of compassion. It's a good idea until you realize, you showed earlier on the show, how much tuition has increased. And the reason is you get a huge amount of money from the federal government that the colleges understand, supply and demand, allow them to increase their tuition. You showed that public institutions increased tuition by 27% since '07, and the more expensive private colleges about half of that. So essentially, it's inflating the budgets of universities. Everybody understands that. In fact, Obama mentioned in one of his State of the Union addresses a kind of attempt to rhetorically demand that colleges roll back tuition. But why should they? His words against a lot of money. So I think that that is the root of the problem. And the other problem is, how do you get out of debt with a job? And the prolonged unemployment, the high chronic unemployment, and the fact that youth unemployment is so high is a reason why this is a more crushing debt than it would be in normal conditions.
This has been a Sunfish production.